So tonight we're continuing in this series we've been in called Old School. So we've been going through these Old Testament books of the Bible, and we've been looking at some different stories and how God worked through different people during that time, and how He showed Himself, how He showed His power, how He showed His love, how He was always going after people's hearts. And tonight we're gonna be looking in the book of Judges at the story of Gideon. How many of y'all know about Gideon? Have you heard about Gideon? Gideon. So as I was reading through the story of Gideon, there was a few things that God pointed out to me. And just to give you some context, at this point in the Bible, this is the book of Judges. So what was happening is Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt. They had just come out of Egypt, and he led them through the desert for a while. They were in the desert for over 40 years. And then Joshua leads the Israelites into the promised land. It had been a long time. They'd been waiting. Finally, they're in the promised land. And this is the time we're in. And at this point, there were no earthly kings. There were no kings over the Israelites. There were just tribes. And so God would appoint a judge to help the people, to point them in the right direction. Because oftentimes, if the people didn't have anybody to lead and guide them, they would turn to their own way. They would reject the love and the guidance that God wanted to give them. God wanted to be the king, right, Wyatt? God wanted to be the king. But these people often got distracted and would go their own way. So at this point, this group called the Midianites, they invade Israel, and they're just terrorizing everything. Everything the Israelites worked so hard for, they're ruining. They're ruining crops, they're stealing food, they're ruining families. And so at this point, the Israelites are like, what are we supposed to do? What are we going to do? And this prophet comes to them and says, turn back to God. God loves you. He wants you to come back to Him. Turn back to God. So then this angel appears to this guy named Gideon. And this is where we're going to pick up. It's in Judges 6, 12 through 16. If you have your Bibles with you, go ahead and turn there. If not, just listen as I read it. And so at verse 12, it says this. It's when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Pardon me, Lord, Gideon replied. But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all His wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. But the Lord turned to him and said, go in your strength. Go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? And again, Gideon said, pardon me? How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my family. But the Lord said to him, I will be with you, and you will strike down the Midianites, leaving none alive. And when I was reading and praying through this, I noticed something. It's something I mentioned earlier. When the angel came to Gideon, what was the first thing he told Gideon? What was the very, very first thing he said? The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. But what was Gideon's response? What did Gideon say? He said, God, where were you all this time? We feel like we've been abandoned. Where were you this whole time? We've been terrorized. Where have you been? And then God said, no, Gideon, I'm sending you. I'm with you, mighty warrior. I haven't abandoned you. I am with you. I am with you. But what was Gideon really saying? What was he really feeling? He was feeling abandoned by God, but he wasn't feeling qualified. The angel called him a mighty warrior. Was he feeling like a mighty warrior? What did he tell the angel? I'm the weakest in my family. I'm the least. I'm the runt of the litter. I'm the weakest one. I'm not qualified to do this. And I feel like God's abandoned me. Why are you sending me to do this? Why are you sending me? What do you think Gideon's life looked like up to that point? If he was saying that he was weak, that wasn't the first time that was said about him. If he was saying he was the least of his family, that wasn't the first time. Can you imagine what his life probably looked like before this point? What do you think his family was telling him? They were probably reminding him all the time, oh, Gideon, you're the weakest one. Yeah, you're not that strong. Yeah, don't forget, you're the weakest one in the family. Let us take care of that. That's not for you. You're the least in the family. How many times do you think he was told that? Because that's what he believed. That's what he told God. He said, I'm weak. I'm the least in my family. And my clan is the weakest. They're the smallest. He felt small and he believed that he was weak. And God knew this already. That's why he said when he appeared to him, I'm with you, mighty warrior. I don't call you weak. I call you a mighty, mighty warrior. I was wondering, could that have been the first time Gideon had heard that in his whole life? What if he was the outcast his whole life, being told by everybody around him, hey, you're the least. You're weak. You're not strong. You're not a mighty warrior. You're not even a warrior. What if he was told that his whole life? What if this was the first time somebody had told him, you are a mighty warrior? That you are a mighty warrior. That's something he had started to believe, that he was weak. You know, this past couple of months, I've been going through the discipleship school here at CrossBridge, and God's been doing some crazy, crazy stuff in my heart. I thought I was in a good place with God. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing okay. This is fine. I'm in a good place. But God's like, no, I'm going to take you deeper. I want to take you through this school. And the crazy thing is, through this school, he's starting to point out all these things in my heart. He's taking me to all these lies that I believed about myself. He's showing me that I actually didn't really trust him with my full heart, that I didn't believe that I was fully loved by him, and I didn't actually believe that he cared for me because I wasn't living like it. He was taking me back to these memories when I was a younger kid. I was really, really shy. So I'd always kind of stand in the back, kind of not drawing attention to myself. And because I was like that, not a lot of people showed attention. And so I started to believe this lie, which was totally untrue. But at that point in my life, I started to believe this lie that said, oh, there's something wrong with you. Nobody really cares. Nobody's showing you any attention. There must be something wrong with you. You're probably not valuable, and you're not worthy. You're not worth it. And so even though I had forgotten some of those memories as a little kid, I still carried that lie with me. And everything I had done, almost everything I had done, I had worked hard. I wanted to prove something. I wanted to prove to everybody around me that I was valuable, that I was worth it, that there was nothing wrong with me. So all my life, I've tried working hard at stuff. I've tried being the best at whatever I'm doing at the moment, trying to prove myself. Even if it looks like being a good person, doing stuff in church, everything was about trying to prove something to somebody, that I'm valuable, that there's nothing wrong with me. And all during that time, even though people would compliment me, that they would encourage me, I still was living like I was trying to prove something. I was still living like I was trying to prove something. Still feeling like there was something wrong with me. That's how I was living. That's the lie I was holding on to in my heart. And even though I didn't even realize it, I was starting to do things subconsciously, thinking that there was something wrong with me, that I was not valuable. And so through this discipleship school, we were praying one night at this retreat, and we were asking God to show different things in our heart. And he started showing me all those memories. And he told me, Daniel, you've been trying to prove something to people. You've tried to prove that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're valuable, but you haven't listened to what I said about you. I've made you new. You are so worth it. You are valuable. There's nothing wrong with you. You are so valuable to the point I sent my son on the cross. And I love you so deeply. I love you so deeply. And I care about your heart. I don't want you to live feeling like you have to prove something to anybody, because you don't. Because your Father loves you. Your Father sees you as valuable. Your Father sees you as a mighty warrior. So I realized I was like Gideon. My answer to God was, I'm weak. People don't see me as enough. People don't see me as enough. I was a lot like Gideon with my response. I didn't feel like I was worthy of being called a mighty warrior. But God went to that deep spot in my heart and he said, no, I call you a mighty warrior. I call you valuable. You have been made worthy. You have been made worthy. And if we look at the rest of the story, what happens? Gideon begins to believe a little bit. He's like, okay, God is with me. I think I'm a mighty warrior. So he gathers 32,000 men. And that seems like a lot, but the Bible says that the Midianite army was so big that it was impossible to count them. So 32,000 is a lot, but compared to the Midianite army, that was not much at all. So he gathers these men, but at this point, he's not really fully believing in his heart that God is with him. He doesn't fully believe that he's a mighty warrior. God can tell that Gideon is still afraid. He sees this, and he wants to take Gideon to a new place of trusting him. He wants to show Gideon that he's a good father and that Gideon can rely on him. So what does he do? He tells Gideon to ask all the 32,000 men, who of you are afraid to do this? Who's afraid to go fight the Midianites? 22,000 get up and leave. 22,000 get up and leave. And then at that point, God's like, well, there's still more. So then he takes them down to this river to drink, and God tells him, send home the guys who kneel down to drink. So then a lot of these guys kneel down to drink, and only 300 didn't. So he sends home all these guys, left only with 300 men, to face an army that is so big that it's impossible to count them. At this moment in time, what do you think Gideon's thinking? He has to believe. He has no other choice but to believe that God's with him. He has no other choice but to believe that he is a mighty warrior, that God will give him the courage, that God will give him the strength to do this. He only has 300 men. So God gives him the strength. He gives him the confidence. He says, I'm with you. I'm with you. And then if we look later in chapter 7, verses 17 through 22, this is what Gideon tells his men. He says, watch me. He splits his men up into three companies. There's 300 men, so 100 in each company. But he tells them, watch me, follow my lead. And when I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp, blow yours and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp, and at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard, they blew the trumpets, and they broke the jars that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets. They smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hands, and holding in their right hands the trumpets they were to blow. They shouted, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled. Was God with him? Was God really with him? Was he a mighty warrior? Was he the man God called him? Look at his response, the way it changed. It went from, no, I'm weak. I'm the least of my family. I'm not worthy to do this. Why are you sending me? I'm not a mighty warrior. But what does God do? He says, no, I call you a mighty warrior. I call you a mighty warrior. And not only that, I'm going to show you that I'm with you. I'm going to show you that I'm with you. I'm going to take away all these men so you have no other option but to lean completely on me. I am with you, Gideon. I am with you always. But Gideon had to step out in obedience. He had to step out in obedience. He had to say, okay, God, I'll do it. I'll do it. It was hard for him to do it because he didn't believe at first, but he said, okay, I'll do it. And when he took that step of obedience, God proved himself to Gideon. He said, I'm with you. He showed him that he was with him. And he showed him that he was the mighty warrior that he called them. This past Sunday through Monday, I went to Dallas, and I was with a couple guys, and we were visiting this church up there called Upper Room. And we were there to meet with some of their leadership and just get some ideas from them and talk and form a relationship. But we went there on Sunday night, and we went to their Sunday evening service, and the speaker was talking, and he was saying, one of the things he was saying really, really grabbed my heart. He said, everything, every insecurity, every anxiety, every anger, it's all rooted from this place of not really knowing deep within our heart that we're loved by God. It's all rooted from this place that we think we're not loved by God. And that's something God's been speaking to me the past couple months through the discipleship school. And it was kind of crazy that he just kept speaking that over me, even in this church that I've only been to once before. Through people I haven't even met, he was telling me the same thing. I love you and I'm with you. And he was just showing me how every insecurity I've ever had, every anxiety, every sleepless night, every anger, that he loves me. That he loves me. So toward the end of that service, they had a worship time, and I went up to the front, and I was just worshiping, and then I felt like God said, "Get on. I want you to get on your knees." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll get on my knees." And so I got on my knees, started praying. I'm like, "God, would you show my heart deep within me that you love me? Would you help me to know with everything I am that you love me? That you love me, God. I want to know it. I don't want to live with insecurity. I don't want to live with anxiety. I don't want to live with anger. I want to know that you love me." And at that moment, I felt like he said, just lay flat on the ground, face flat on the ground. And at first I was like, no, that's dumb. It looks stupid. I'm not going to lay face flat on the ground. It looks so dumb. And the ground's probably really disgusting too. There's a lot of people in here, so I'm not going to do that. And so I was kind of fighting it for a little while. And then finally I was like, okay, I'll do it, God. So I just laid on the ground. I was still hesitating. I was still kind of struggling. I felt like he said, stop struggling. I want to show you something. So after that, I just laid my face flat on the ground. And all of a sudden, this wave of peace just fell on me. Something I haven't felt in a really, really long time. And then I just closed my eyes and started resting. And then he took me back to every single memory in my past where I felt like I was alone, or I felt like I was abandoned. He took me to every memory where I was making a mistake. And in each memory, he gave me a picture of him coming around me with his arms saying, "Daniel, I love you. I love you. I love you." And that night, as I went to bed, I had the most peaceful rest I've had in a really long time. My heart's still learning to believe it. I'm still learning to live like I know that God really loves me, that he calls me a mighty warrior, that he calls me valuable. But little by little, God's speaking to my heart every day, showing me that's what he actually says about me. That's what he actually says about me. Because I want to live from a place where my heart knows that deep within me. Last night, I was at discipleship school, and we were going through this passage of the lost son. You've probably read this or you've heard it before. It's the son who runs away. And I'm just going to read it to you guys. And there's something the Lord really spoke to me, but I'm going to read it to you guys first. In verse 11, in chapter 15 of Luke, in verse 11, Jesus tells his disciples, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided the property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out as a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. So I'm going to set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and I've sinned against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son, but could you make me like one of your hired hands?' So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around his son, and kissed him. The son said to him, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. As the band comes back up, there was something that really jumped out at me yesterday. I started asking God, what do you have to say to me through this? And 2 words came to mind: hired hand. I was starting to wonder, what does that mean? Why are you telling me that? And he started to show me, Dan, you've come home, like that lost son, you've come home. But you're still living thinking that you're a hired hand. You're still living thinking that you're supposed to be a hired hand. You don't actually believe that I'm celebrating over you, that I'm so happy, that it delights my heart. You're still living like you're only worth a hired hand. I want you to know who you really are. I want you to know who you really are. I want you to know who you really are. I don't want you to have that response like Gideon had at first. I'm the least, I'm the weakest. Why would you send me? Because in reality, God calls us mighty warriors. He calls each of us mighty warriors. And he's saying to each of us, I am with you. I am with you. Even though you feel like you're abandoned, I am with you. I love you and I'm with you. And I'm going to take you deeper. I'm going to call you to big things. But remember, I'm with you. You don't have to do it on your own, not on your own strength. There's no way Gideon and 300 men could have taken out that Midianite army by themselves. God had to be with them. And that's what he's saying, I'm with you. So as we head back into worship, as we head into life group, I want us to ask these questions. Do we feel alone, like God is not with us? And do we believe that we are loved by him? Do we believe that we are mighty warriors? And do we believe that he celebrates over us? Do we believe that he's celebrating over us? That he's bringing out his best and saying, I love you so much. I love you so incredibly much. So we head into life group, into worship. I just want us to ask those questions. Do we believe that God is with us? And do we believe that we're mighty warriors, that we're valuable to him? Jesus, I thank you for what you've been speaking to our hearts tonight. Thank you for what you've been speaking to our hearts tonight. God, you are with us. You are for us and you're not against us. You love us. You see us coming home. You see us walking down that road. And you come running down, so excited. You're so excited. You bring out your best. And a lot of times we think we're only worthy to be a hired hand. And even though we've come home, we still feel like we can only be a hired hand. But you're saying, no. You're my son, you're my daughter. Let's celebrate. I'm so happy that you're here. I delight over you. You are a mighty warrior. You are valuable. You are that mighty warrior. You're not the least. You're not the least. You are valuable. God, show our hearts that you are with us. Some of us may feel abandoned, left out, but would you show us that you're with us? Would you take us to those deep places in our heart and show us why we believe that? God, you are with us. You call us to great things. It's because you're with us. You're not going to leave your children alone. Would you fill each and every person in this room? Would you teach each of our hearts to live knowing that we're loved? Teach us to live knowing that we're loved. God, we want to love you with everything, and we want to know your love. We want to live knowing your love deep within our hearts. Be with us right now.